and maybe turret rotation speed? No, they're the same.
Hello.
Hello.
Looks like it will be the two of us. One moment. Shall we start?
I don't know. No one else is here though.
Maybe it's
We did say we'd start at past, but
say that again.
we did say we'd start at past, but
I mean, it doesn't look like anyone wants to join, so maybe we should just start to talk, and if someone hops in.
Sure, I guess it might be a bit chaotic with occasional people hopping in and seeing what's what, but we'll see.
That's a good start. Episode 1. It's harder to start with only 2 people.
Yeah, it's not as much interaction with everyone in that. And what is it actually focusing mostly on? Because I just want to have a rough idea of what to actually say.
Yeah, it's easier not to talk over each other. That's a plus.
I guess so.
We will see. Beyor said that he might hop in later. We will see how long it will go.
Right.
Alright. We had a few topics, right? We talked about. Let's start with what would the podcast most relevant? The SAO as a whole.
Yeah, and then perhaps in later ones, focus a bit more in terms of parts of it.
Yeah. We have a lot of material to go on, so it will last a few episodes.
Oh, definitely. Although I probably won't be too knowledgeable on what happens after the film, I think. Yes. Yeah, you have the first 2 seasons, then you have the film, and then you have or whatever it's called, Halazation, whatever it's called.
I don't know how to pronounce that, but War of the Underworld and the season
Yeah,
before that.
Yeah, the Underworld.
Yeah, me too. I just stopped up after Mother's Rosario. I think I haven't even seen the movie yet, but I plan to watch it sometimes when I have time for that.
I'll watch it when I have the time, but when I have the time, I end up not watching it. Like, okay, next time. And the next time comes around. Okay, next time, and then the next time comes around, and we just repeat for like 2 years. And that's basically been me and watching the film in season 3. I don't know. It's other things always keep cropping up, and I don't generally have the time, even though I have the time to watch it.
Yeah. Right? See if wants to join. Hey!
Oh, hey, Bill. Hey,
we have 3 people!
4 people.
Yes. I have just gotten back from a 6-hour-long writing session, and my body is ready for some memes.
Oh, yes, the DNA of the soul.
The
DNA of the soul.
Yeah, the DNA of the soul.
Nanomachines, son.
What? I need to fix my sound. Okay, let's try this.
What?
There we go. Now I have arrived. So, what is this?
Unlimited power. Sorry.
Hmm?
There's unlimited volume.
Unlimited volume.
The power of
No.
the dark side is strong with this one.
All I really did was turn Panzer down to 63% volume and you down to up to 100. So
Nice.
nice. This means that if you speak and Panzer speak, I will only hear you.
Oh, lovely.
Wow.
Let's say turn Panzer up a bit. But yes, what is the plan? What is the goal?
We have no plan.
You have no plan.
That's the plan.
Oh, God. It's good that I arrived.
It's basically talking more about, was it because this is the first proper one? The other one was more of a pilot thing. It
Yeah.
was mostly about the franchise as a whole and fan fictions going around that. Nothing in too particular for now, I'd say.
Okay.
Because that'll be more into the context for the later ones, so we can focus on individual pieces from there. But
Yeah.
yes, is it overall?
Later we can.
Sort
Later we can do something like each podcast will be focused on one arc, or maybe just the anime or just the manga. But I think it's just a starting point. This one.
So the main point is just to discuss SAO.
More going off topic for more than half the time, but
Okay, that's more good. Yeah, I can live with that.
We live for the memes.
Of course we do. Oh no, there's cheese war starting in the chat again.
The fifth cheese war starts now.
Oh God.
I saw it as pizza, and then the pizza leads to cheese, and then it's going to lead to everything else around it.
True. Oh no.
Oh no, the cheese grater.
Death to all cheese.
Oh, that woman though, who just picks up the pizza slicer and laughs maniacally before eating it. Oh, she could be an SAO villain.
Best villain, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, all the good villains eat stuff.
To be a very good villain, generally 9 times out of 10 they will eat an apple, take a few bites of it, and then they put it in the bin. They don't never finish it.
Oh God,
Villain. Villain to Sandwich Kun. He was innocent.
There was too curve for this one.
Must go eat.
He was too young. Just today, I started to write My Hero Academia one shot, and I just sacrificed the sandwich for the memes.
No, not the sandwich.
The
Sandwich makes you strong.
The sandwich
Poor
diet
Sam.
for the production.
Only 3 sandwiches died during the production of this series.
It's too much. It's too much to bear.
It's too
We
much.
remember their sacrifice.
When did they actually have like a disclaimer back in the day on old movies, like
Yeah.
this many people died during the production of this movie, or this many cows died during the production of this movie?
Yeah.
I think they still kind of do that now, but I don't really notice it.
Wait.
No one looks, and well, a lot of people look at the end credits,
Yeah.
but no one looks at the end credits.
What would
That's why. That's why they. That's why they do the after credit thing as well, just to make sure people watch the credits.
Yeah, Marvel did it very well with that.
True.
What
Well,
would
no one really reads the credits, even though there's after credits. They just sit there and listen to the music for a while.
Yeah.
So,
Wait, what would
And
be
it's-
placed as the disclaimer for SAO? How many people died in its production?
of course, yes.
3,800, if I remember right.
Yes. It just says underneath, like, SAO 2 will come in 5 months. Enjoy. We're planning on doubling the deaths,
God,
double the players, double the kills.
dominating.
Everything will be fine as long as at least one people die by crying Leroy Jenkins.
Leroy.
Leroy!
Do you know how many people died? Do you know how many people died while shouting Leroy Jenkins? It was more than 0.
There's a lot about humanity.
That's true.
Yeah, it was from Newbridge.
Yeah, I know. I've seen the image. It is epic content. I just don't know who Leroy Jenkins is in general because I've heard people.
He wasn't a basketball player, but I have no idea to be true.
Okay.
To tell the truth.
It's probably a basketball player, a sports player, and then the commentator just screamed, Leroy Jenkins!
I think it came from World of Warcraft, when they were about to chart. They were supposed to be discussing about how to deal with this boss or something. And then the guy comes back after everything's done. It's like, all right, chums, let's do this. Leroy Jenkins. And everyone just dies straight away.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
Gamer.
Sounds like high quality gameplay.
Of course.
Of course.
That's what we need more of.
Yes, obviously. That's what we need SAO to be. It's just a character that screams Leroy Jenkins every time he goes into fight.
Yeah.
I type it in, and the third one which comes up is SAO abridged.
Wow. Leroy.
Hopefully, there we go.
Oh,
That's
the original name.
Nice.
Okay, guys. I love it. God. Hell,
Yeah.
I can't. Oh my God. It's more responding. I don't think.
Have a nice one, Beyor. Pizza!
It's a pizza time.
It's pizza time. Pizza time. Spider-Man brings us pizza time.
Okay, so Leroy Jenkins is just one of the players.
Yeah, it just shouts Leroy Jenkins before charging in, and everything just goes wrong.
The funny thing is, there are a lot of gifts for that.
Oof.
So yes, if SEO ever does actually exist, at least one person must die while shouting that.
Yeah. Just imagine what would it be like.
Dog just jumped out the window. Oh my god, that dog is so dead. Oh my god.
Just imagine what would be if like Kirito fighting Heathcliff and he just charges ahead and shouting Leroy Jenkins.
What is this video?
Okay.
I'm just looking at the dog jumping out the window. It's like, what is this?
Leroy Jenkins. Oh god.
That has a life of its own.
Okay, so shall we start analyzing the actual SAO stuff and see if we can be serious for more than 10 seconds?
I have no high hopes for us, but let's try.
Okay.
No promises.
What was the first episode about again? It starts with him logging into the game.
Yeah.
And then... Oh, what is it?
And then it was
he logs into SAO for the first time, and then Klein spots him.
You mean Klein, yeah.
No, from what I understand, like if I remember the exact scenes, he jumps into the game, he opens his eyes, and then it zooms out, revealing some of the first floor, and she's like, "This is Sword Art Online."
Yeah, maybe Luke's on that before that, but yeah.
Yeah, and then afterwards you get it goes straight to this scene where he's training Klein to kill a boar.
And then he finds the Stone of Pigs Fighting.
Yes. How do you feel about the scene?
I thought it was a mini boss at least.
It is a funny establishment of characters. Like, you definitely get to see that Klein just isn't, particularly good at video games.
I think nobody really good at it at first because it's for a new gem, for a new gameplay basically.
Yeah,
so...
but you would know that a boar with red eyes is not a mini boss if you played games in your life.
Yeah.
So I just like starting the series out with him and Klein being together playing the game would have been a much smarter thing, I think, if Klein actually was a very prevalent character throughout the game. Like if it joined up with Klein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at that point, it kind of just becomes a moment where you introduce this barely used character in addition to establishing some of the game rules like sword skills and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they could have used it a bit more to, I don't know, introduce more about the game before going into the plot. But
Yeah.
And I think the smartest thing would just be to have them go on a couple of quests together, to the point where, like, you would actually have Klein as a character. Like, I feel the scene is very, very crucial to explain the game mechanics to some degree without being unnatural, but it just is kind of lessened by the fact that he doesn't continue to be with Klein. And if it did, that wouldn't be much of a problem.
Yeah. I really hate, because I love Klein, and he's such a good character and deserves more. But part of it I can understand, because in the light novel, it starts with Kirito fighting by himself on floor 74th before going back a flashback and reliving the first day. And and it's just basically telling us that now I don't need friends, I am a solo player, I will fight alone. And
yeah,
we
it's just
lost
an
Klein. We lost best boy.
we lost him, but I think that's better. Like, for the way he uses, like, it's better if he doesn't want Klein to be there in the start. It's better that he starts it out alone, just because it foreshadows, or it presents a character that just isn't going to be used yet.
I think it would have been better that he really starts alone. He meets up proper, like in progressive, and almost dies because he betrays him. And Klein he could have encountered him and his group in a little while later, before the first boss fight, and befriend them. I think it would have worked so much better than.
Yeah, I feel like what the plot for a character should be is that he is willing to join guilds in the start, and he's not really alone. The reason he becomes a loner is because of what happens to the Moonlight Cats later in the series.
Yeah.
Is it the Moonlight Cats? That's probably not the name, but you get the point.
Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but who cares? If you haven't watched SAO by now,
you will not.
Go watch it. It's not. We're not responsible for not spoiling. We're not responsible for not spoiling when the podcast intention is to review a series.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, you don't review a series and go, let's not review any of the stuff that's important to the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it about Progressive Kirito's character, at least in Progressive 1, that he really feels bad about abandoning people, so to speak, to play solo, to use his own knowledge. But I think it would have been better to do what they did later with Moonlit Black Cats, that he still plays with people, helps them, but he stays silent about his past and feels bad about it, that he's not very truthful with them, that he can't trust anyone, he feels like.
Yeah, no, because like my version of Kirito, which I haven't written yet, but I'm kind of writing later once I get to that chapter.
Eventually.
Yeah. So basically, he starts, like, he's gonna be in the second chapter of my fanfiction, but he's with the Moonlight Cats in the start. Like, he meets up with them and he starts being the leader, mostly because he's a beta tester, and I've also given him some other qualities that make more sense that he's so good at the game. But first and foremost, because he's a beta tester and he wants to help these guys out. And so he kind of sticks with them for most of the floors, and he's one of the reasons why there's frontliners in the start. Is because of the fact that, very few players actually want to play in the start of the game because you would risk dying. And since he was a beta tester comfortable with doing so, he managed to convince them to join him and help him out. Let me see here. Yeah, and then when they die, he basically they don't die because of some mistake in the dungeon. They die because some of the first PKers PKs his team, right? And he manages to kill the PKer, but the PKer manages to kill most of them because they slack off for a bit. They aren't as active players, and they fall back. And then a PKer that's been a frontliner who is just much better than the XP wise manages to take them down. But them together weakened him enough for Kirito to be the last hit. And then Kirito just gets a pure and undying hatred for PKers. And so he starts seeking out red cursor players and murdering the fuck out of them. Which makes him not likable because, he's a person who goes around killing people. Which is one of the reasons why he's alone.
Wow.
That's my explanation for it. Yes.
That's interesting, really.
Yeah, it's
good.
one thing I would say definitely is that really links in like how at least personally, how the first episode was like, how it was supposed to lay out the entirety of the series.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like it fits really well with that. But I know it's like from episode 2 onwards, it's like it changes in terms of how it's depicting everything around it. Personally, it's like it shifts tone slightly. It's like, okay, it's no longer the same thing I was picturing this is going to be. You've just trapped 10,000 people in it, and I was expecting it to be a bit more, not grim, but not as pleasant as it is.
Yeah, you wanted it to be a story about, the hardship of going through this castle, because the conflict that the series set up was they're trapped here, and they got to get out, and to do that, they got to beat 100 freaking floors. 100 freaking floors is a lot, and they have to spend a lot of time on each floor, and it's going to be a struggle, right?
Yeah.
But it ends up focusing on tiny stories with individual characters and developing that to some degree, and it's nice for character development, but it never sticks on characters long enough that you're interested in them, and it never sticks on events long enough that you're interested in them.
Yeah, it's nice to see characters, but there's no real world building in a sense.
Yeah.
This is why progressive is a very good step forward compared to the original, because it does start to explore those things.
Yeah. Well,
And that's what you can expect from a writer who's had more time to gain competence. So.
Yeah. Well, in a sense, in my own story, I started well before I started reading the progressive volumes, but I still used the wiki and what information I could use, and I tried to give not every floor, but most floors a little description, what they encountered in it, and even if nothing else happened there, and tried to give it a sense of progression, that they took a week to defeat the 6th floor boss, right? Things like that. Not just time skip and we have somewhere something happening. And here's Kirito.
Yeah, of course. So no, it's the same basically that I'm doing with my series. I don't care enough to Google stuff, so I just I'll make it up as I go along. But what I do is that I've divided my story into subsets of larger storylines. And the first one is basically the main character, along with Klein and Silica, starting a guild and basically developing what's going to become the front lines, right? And you get to explore the main dilemma there is players aren't active. And that's the problem they have to solve there, and it's also, you get to know those characters, and you get to see how the game works and how questing is. And it takes time. Like it's probably going to be somewhere between 10 and 20 chapters for the first 3 to 6 floors, right? But that's just the first story, and then, that's a lot of chapters per floor in principle, and that would make a really long fan fiction if I did that with every single floor, which I'm not going to do, because once I get to the 6th floor, hypothetically, that part of the story will be finished, and what happens between then is just, questing, defeating boss, questing, defeating boss. So then I switch over to a new storyline, for example, Kirito with his guild dying, right? And so I switched practically over to Kirito instead of my OC, and then you get to experience Kirito when his guild dies and how he reacts to it, and him hunting down these player killers. And then you get a new story that also takes its time and goes over multiple floors and multiple chapters, but you still have time skips that makes it so the story isn't overly long. So you take enough time, you don't take too much time, and you don't take too little time. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Interesting.
that's really good because I don't know. I feel like how long was it? How long was the first arc? Like 12 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's for like 75 floors and just having 12 episodes. It doesn't feel like that is
Yeah.
enough to actually explore what's going on. If it was longer, like how Progress is doing it, then that would be a lot better in my eyes.
Like, you could make the first floor 12 episodes, and that would be good. I wouldn't make it 12, I'd make it 3 or 4 maybe, right? But, you could divide it much better because each floor is interesting and there's a lot going to happen there. And you don't really divide it into floors, you divide it into longer storylines. Because what he did, he realized he couldn't divide it into floors because then he'd have to make at least 100 episodes and probably 400 episodes, right? And that's too much. So what he did is he found storylines, he just didn't make them long enough. He didn't make them more than Silica lost her dragon, let's go find the flower that lets her get the dragon back.
Yeah.
Instead of... Yeah.
Yeah. I did a similar thing in my own story that the first 10 chapters, I think, focused on really building the front line, little politics into it, and how they get into a stable point where they can safely move forward. And now I'm for the last 5 chapter I'm writing my what I call my Lauquin Coffin arc, where basically my main character and his group gets targeted, and they attack back, and they lose people. And then starts the hunt again and again, and I will want that part to be take over most of the essay time spent in Sword Art Online.
Yeah, it's for me personally. Granted, I'm in the minority in terms of quite what I like in that, but I think a world to be explored, especially of one like this, of being so unusual compared to how it is to like how we used to. And after a while, a culture and a society, I guess, will build up around the people like trying to clear the front lines. There's people backing them up. Then there's like blacksmiths around them. There's might be disagreements between certain guilds and that. And I just find that a bit more interesting to explore rather than just, I don't know, one person kind of ignoring all of them and occasionally interacting with the odd person. I'd like him to see how much of an influence these larger guilds have in terms of everyone else. Are people forced to join them just because they're big, or are they bullied by them or something? Just more exploration in terms of because I guess that's kind of it really. Just more exploration in the world they've been kind of forced into. So
I agree. I did.
Go
ahead.
You can go first.
I did something that for me we have in my story we have 3 large guilds. The Divine Dragon Alliance, the Knights of the Blood Oath, and my character's own guild. And I basically, the big decisions always fall to them, that they just inform the smaller guilds that that's what we are going to do, that's what we are going to do, and you can send X people to the raid party, and the rest will be from us. Things like that. That hierarchy, it's kind of centered around the large guild with the powerful members.
Yeah, no, because as one of the core things I've learned with writing is that taking your time is some of the best stuff you can do, because where things get interesting is or the characters that are interesting and that feel nice are usually the characters that kind of just make sense that they're there. Like, I was writing the start of my second chapter, or editing it more rather, and the first part just had all the characters I needed to have. It had the 3 characters that were supposed to talk together and do what they needed to do. But very quickly that kind of got stale, and so when I rewrote it, to add more flow to the text, I added these 2 characters that's called Christopher and what's it called, Abigail, something like that. I'm not good with names. but and they were just to add some more flow because they were owners of this restaurant. But within a couple of seconds, they suddenly became core characters to the story. Right? They became family members to the real characters, and each of them had their own interesting personality that would show to have clearly developed in some of the other characters that were on screen, especially the main character, because I know they had basically raised them, or at least raised them for a large part of their life. And that way I could suddenly explain qualities of a character by showing these older, more mature characters that I could also use to foreshadow a bit. And they became a much more intricate part of the system instead of just, the 3 characters I needed to be there. I actually added some characters that were fun because I gave it the time and I sat down. I was like, this scene is too short. I need more. I need to make it flow better. I need more things to concentrate on. Right?
Yeah, I had a similar thing happen to me that I had a group of 4 players that I wanted to be in one group in the first floor fight, and I wanted to add 2 more people so they have a war group. So I wrote a pair of brothers joining them, but after the battle they went away on their own. Yet I still found myself writing them back, returning in a few chapters later, and before I noticed, they are a core part of the guild of my story.
Yeah, and that's kind of fun stuff.
It's nice when the characters write themselves for you, basically.
Yeah, and it's and also one thing which I feel like it is one of the most essential parts of these kind of stories, especially with people's lives on the line, is by creating interesting characters with interesting personalities. They have quirks, they may have flaws, they have strengths, but they feel human. Their conversations feel human, and how they interact with others. They're not perfect in how they're interacting with others. Some of them may be a bit too nervous, but in the right ways, and that's what I feel like these kind of stories, especially, and would work extremely well with.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like this is a story where you want to focus on the characters and you want to focus on the fights the characters gone through, because you could boil the story down to just being let's fight the boss, but no one cares about just fighting the boss. One, because when you're writing a book or a chapter, it's very hard to make long and very densely populated fighting scenes interesting.
Yeah, I usually do it with my character becoming reckless and doing insane things. So to spice things up.
Like one of my things is that I made my characters a min-maxer. So basically he sacrifices all the durability on his weapon for lightness, so that he can use a two-handed weapon as if he was using a knife. But the problem with that is that if his weapon gets hit, it breaks. And the only way it doesn't break is if he does a perfect block, which basically negates any durability damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he relies in fights on being able to perfectly block every single attack against them. And he's pretty good at the game, so he mostly does that, but a lot of times he'll be surprised or he'll make a mistake and his sword will just disappear, and that's it. He can't do anything about it. He's just weaponless in the fight.
Yeah.
So
that's actually quite interesting in terms of the stuff, because it is an MMO after all. Granted, people are trapped in, but it is an MMO after all. People would min-max.
Yeah.
Even if it's beneficial for them or just for the fun of it, people will min-max stuff. They will min-max one stat over the other. So you have someone with a max of 1 and nothing on the other, and another would be the opposite way around.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing. That's also one of the reasons. Like I also explained because I want him, I want him to become a smith in the game, also because he's min-maxing. It's not easy to find good pre-forged min-maxing weapons, so he has to produce them himself, and his weapons break so often that it's just cost-effective to produce them himself. And that makes it so that later in the game I can have him open a forging shop, and then I can have the fun part, which I want Lisbeth to be the to be the heroine. That's not the name for it, but the female interest. And the way I'm gonna introduce her.
Yes.
Love interest now, I think.
Of interest, yes, that works. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, romance. Okay, go on.
Or
Yes.
sheep.
And the way I'm gonna do that is that they both open a forging shop on the same floor, and they both start out as enemies and
Rivals?
right, yeah, because he's taking her money and she's taking his money at times, and they're just pumping their stuff into to smithing, and they're having lots of mental battles and lots of like economic battles, and you get to see that the main character, who's in principle quite smart and quite good with this kind of stuff, he tends to win a bit, but then she crushes him because she's more emotionally competent and she knows how to lure him in and how to make him freak out and how to make him make mistakes. And she also has been on that floor for much longer. She has a much better reputation. And you get this fight with them. And then in the end, once one of them is close to breaking, the other one is just like, I know, I'll just team up or something.
Wow, that's interesting, really.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the writing. Only problem is that's like chapter 70 and I'm on chapter 2.
Yeah, I feel the same with I'm writing a crossover, and I'm basically writing the events of SAO before the events of the other anime, and I'm writing it about 1.5 years now. I'm chapter 16, and not even the first year of SAO is over, and, and then just I think at least 100 chapters to start to the first part. But I just love so much, and I love going into the smaller things to build the world, to build the characters themselves, and I just can't stop.
That's one of the worst things about trying to pace things right, is that when you come up with a good story or a good character, you have to logically think where you're going to put that character in. And then you determine that, well, if I'm going to put this character in, I want to do it this way. That means my character or these characters needs to have done this thing, and doing this thing should happen around this time. And then you realize, well, I have 40 chapters of plans before that time. But I've already thought about that time. What am I supposed to do now? Because I'm not going to be able to think about the next chapter I'm supposed to write. I'm going to think about that for the rest of the year.
Yeah. I always end up that I'm already imagining a good skin or a good fight in about 4 chapters away, and I just sat in front of my computer and I need to write the next chapter, not the one after it. I just can't. It's just too good.
Yeah, that's true. Something I often like. Where did my brain go? Fuck. I hate when this happens. I'm about to say something. I have a whole conversation planned for hours forwards, and then my brain's like, no, I'm not good enough. Delete.
Yeah. For me,
Where am I?
For me,
I will have to take a toilet break, so I'll leave you guys to the conversation for a couple of minutes.
For me,
Okay.
For me, this usually happens that I have a good thing planned out. I just want to write or just talk about it, and I found a meme, and it just lost the meme that stays.
And okay, we'll focus on this now, not the work, not the productivity that we should actually be doing.
Yeah. If you think about it, this podcast is basically us having fun, us talking, instead of writing.
Yeah, don't blame me for this. It's everyone's fault. Everyone builds into the snowball effect of whatever. The next moment, general's full of memes.
Yeah.
The conversation is just memes. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's.
If you are talking about stories, and I started reading yours, the Sabertooth one.
Oh yes, I was wondering because I've released the pilot for the first 3 episodes, and so the original one's done, but I've wondered why the views were suddenly going up for that one. So it's because not many people have actually read the previous one, so everyone's going back to the previous one before reading the sequel.
Yeah, well, I'm right now.
So say what you think of it, please.
Well, I only read 4 chapters so far, I think if I remember right, they are just about to be attacked. I think I like the idea because not always Kirito, the main character.
Yeah. I was just thinking because I like alternate universe things. It's like, oh, what if we do this or do that, and
Yeah.
how that affects things. That's how that came about. Sorry, continue.
Same here. I like your main character. He's really mysterious, but doesn't come off like a Kirito clone, and what I was worried about when I started reading that we got an OC, and it will be Kirito just with different features. But instead, I'm really curious about knowing him more as I read through the story. Uh, and when I finally finish it, I will get back at you.
Marvelous, thank you. Because that's the main thing I look for saying that, because I usually focus more on original characters that put into a franchise and that. But knowing that I'm not just making a blatant overpowered or self-insert, I'm happy, because that's what a good original character is supposed to be. They're supposed to fit into the world and not feel like, oh, they've just put themselves into it, or this one's just clearly overpowered, or this is just a clone of a previous character which already exists in it. It's its own unique thing, and yet it fits well in what you put it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I shot myself in the foot, because I've made a character that I consider very unique and that I like a lot, and that has a lot of real nice qualities. The problem is, he has, like, the min-maxing thing makes him feel like he's a bit overpowered. And he also helped make the game, which makes him even more overpowered. So, yes.
Granted, they may be overpowered in one aspect, but they could be incredibly weak in another one, which would balance it out, like how all things should be.
Well, no, I don't think all things should be balanced. Like, especially people
Dennis wants to know
aren't
your
balanced.
location.
So, well, he definitely has qualities he's not good at. For example, like, one of the things is that since he helped make the game, he feels incredibly guilty for the fact that everyone is trapped in the game and dying, right? And so his main weakness is that, sure, and also the game is using the what's it called? The system that generates it, and they basically set it to randomly generate the game with some, like, preset conditions, and so he doesn't actually know everything that's happening in the game. He doesn't know what weapons, he doesn't know what bosses, he doesn't know what cities or even what the floors are going to look like, which makes him a lot less OP. Obviously, that helps a bit. But he is definitely a character that feels like a self-insert that you just made very overpowered, because he has an education or a master's degree in engineering and is highly logically capable, and that's mostly just because you need that to invent immersive VR or full dive. But yes.
If you are talking about OC characters, I back then when I started writing, I started a Mass Effect story that I didn't put up in the end, with an OC character that's basically a self insert, that he ends up in the Mass Effect universe, but instead of making him a super soldier or something, he is in the body of an actual soldier, and he has the skills, but he doesn't remember them, and he also is very afraid. He doesn't want to risk his life, and that's why he always tries to get the easy jobs, get the nice, easier. There's no chance of death for him.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you write an OC or an overpowered character, that you give him faults. So even if he's the strongest one, he can't use it all the time.
Yeah, that's probably something that's quite crucial to a story too. Like, why is this person risking their life all the time, right? If you're a soldier, then you could principle say that, well, he's doing it to save his country or to win the war, but you kind of need to establish that to some degree. That's one of the things that is nice about the SAO plot, because you know that they're trapped in this place and they want to get out because, they can die in there. So they're mostly doing it because, you know, there is a slight or if they don't do it, they'll be trapped in there, or they'll die from, you know, the resources being tapped out in the real life, because they're not going to keep them on ventilators for 50 years.
Yeah, that's also a good idea. How long would the government keep people alive? If
Like, that's one of the main motivations for my main character, because he went in the game simply to keep people alive, and he knows that. Now, he doesn't know the exact amount of ventilators in Japan, but he knows the general amount of people they could keep alive, and he knows the cost it takes to keep people alive like that, right? And he knows that Rinko, if you remember that character, who is his sister in the story, is going to make efforts to keep them alive in the real world, like politically, by telling the government they can find solutions, and that probably warning them that there's a chance the game might let them out. But he's, you know, he knows that not everyone even has the money to put their kids in hospital with ventilators, and that's why so many people die within the first months of the game, because a lot of them just can't go to the hospital after being starved for a couple of weeks. And yeah, so that's what he's fighting against. He gets really pissed when people are hiding in the town because they think they can just wait it out there, when all they're really doing is waiting for the rest of the players to die. So
they can keep being alive.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Nice.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's. I know, granted, I understand the entire point of the franchise is to focus more on the VR games than that, but but with what's gone on and how things progress throughout it, it'd be interesting to see how that affects things around it. But
yeah.
I guess that's not the main focus of it, so it's not a huge importance. But it's nice to see some occasional thing just in the background, just pointing things out and how things bleed onto others. But
no, because currently I'm switching between short scenes of flashbacks from when they started developing the game and stuff, and what events led up to the SAO game, just slowly progressing along with the story. But as I actually catch up to a point where I don't need to do those flashbacks more, I'll probably skip over to Rinko, who is in real life and having to deal with both Kayaba and her brother, the only two other creators of the game, having gone into the game, and Kayaba obviously being the cause of it. And then you get to follow that for a while, and then you can actually see the consequences of what the game is doing in real life, and how they're keeping people alive and stuff like that. And I haven't thought it all out because I haven't needed to yet. Yes.
Yeah, that's nice.
One thing which always catches me off is that basically, so the entire point of this is they're trapped in it because of the code and whatever. But I'm surprised afterwards these VR games are doing so well. Even the fact, like 6 months ago, about a good 10,000 people were trapped in one.
Yeah, no. I'm not gonna make much of the game after it. That's not my plan.
No,
because I can agree with you on that it's not particularly probable that people would be too interested in it.
Because it might kill you. That might be a bad point on it. It's not like it's got too much water in it. It's the fact that it may have a possibility of killing you.
Yeah, and it's been proven to kill many people.
Yeah,
right?
But I think that's was a good idea from Kawahara to make the atmosphere a safe version of the Nervagear.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of marketing and a lot of misinformation going about in the real world that we don't know about. So people would stay interested because the military wants to study it, so they want more people to work on it, I think.
Yeah, one of my explanations would basically be that both the main character and Rinko stays in the real world while Kayaba uploads himself. And they basically have to rebuild the reputation of the company. And they obviously blame it on Kayaba because Kayaba said, blame it on me, please. But it comes down to the fact that their company isn't it's not like they're not very well known. A lot of the small pieces of technology they use to build the nerve gear are mainstream within both militaries and medical communities, right? The fact that they can shut down the entire nervous system of a body with just a little chip is amazing for avoiding the use of what's it called, painkillers, mostly because you can have allergic reactions to those things, but you can't have an allergic reaction to your nervous system being shut down, and you can still stay conscious while people are doing things, and that makes the chances of you getting brain injuries much lower.
Yeah.
And you can also use it for psychological care and on and on and on. And so their company is known for having done many good things, and therefore they can rebuild it, because they can argue that it was just
We can rebuild it stronger.
Yeah, we can rebuild it stronger.
I think that explanation of it sounds really similar to what I read in a few Harry Potter fanfics, that they say the Unforgibles were made for good reasons, and people use them for bad reasons. And it's an interesting side of the thing.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, because the reason why they built SAO, there's a good reason. Like, he knew that the SAO was going to be a death game. They all three of them agreed on making it a death game in the start. But after some events, he started to disagree, and he convinced Rinko to join him. And obviously, since there was two of them voting against it, Kayaba just joined. But after a while, Kayaba evaluated that it would be better to just do it, and they'd basically finished the entire code for the death game by then. Or the system didn't really need you to finish any code for it. You just needed to set parameters, because that's part of the Cardinal program. That it's just a randomly, or it's a program that can generate hyper-realistic VR environments simply by putting tiny conditions in to how it's going to generate it, which is basically how the egg works. Yeah, if I'm going to use the egg, which I'm probably not. But brain went away again.
That's a good idea. In my story, I did part of it that I made the game hackable in a way that a few people were able to gain footage from the game to see how the players are doing, and while they can't rescue them, there's at least proof that they are slowly getting closer and closer to the final objective. So
yeah, no, that's,
really
I'm probably make it so that Rinko, who knows the technology well, explain or devises out technology for how some hospital can, for example, make it less likely that you actually die. Right, like they're capable of, like, if someone dies in the game, it's less likely that the microwave thing happens by, so 1 in 100 actually survive, and then you get actual survivors from the game that come out and are capable of explaining what's going on in the game, and then you can have an entire political thing about that.
Yeah. Because my story deals with the mafia, because it's a Katekyo Hitman Reborn crossover. I mostly plan to do that. The mafia knows about the game. They know that a few members are trapped in it, and they are basically pressuring the Japanese government to keep the kids alive, so they will not lose any important people. So it's more like more like the story in the story's background. The things are going.
That is both weird and really cool. I can just imagine the mafia standing right next to or going into the room of the Japanese governor and just being like, "You keeping those alive? 5 of my men are in there," and say, "It's 10,000 people. That's 10,000 ventilators. Oh my god!"
Basically, the largest family's second in command son is the main character, and the main character right now doesn't know that his father in the mafia, but his father knows. His father sent people that you go keep the government in place. You try to get the kids out of there, try to hack a game, and it's basically they can't afford to lose my main character, because as the time goes, he will be the only one who can inherit the
No.
title of the Mafia Don. So they just and the worst thing is that there's someone from the mafia inside who manipulates events, and he's actually gunning for the kid. That's basically a Locking Coffin arc is that they are manipulated by this bad guy who really wants to either kill the main character or just torture him because it's fun. And
well, they could make it so that he has a good motivation, like the mafia killed his entire family and he wants revenge.
I don't want to too much spoiler because it's a spoiler for the Katakuri Hitman Reborn story, but basically this bad guy is a kind of ghost who came back when this family was first made in the first generation, and he wants this family to be the baddest, to the largest family and everything, while the boss and basically the current boss and my main character too basically wants to take it more less evil direction. They more like a vigilante group in the end than a real mafia. That's why they want it, and that ghost doesn't want it. He wants to keep things the way it were before, that they are the bad mafia who controls everything, and that's his motivation. That either he kills him and they will need to tie a new heir, or just tortures him and takes control of him in the end.
Yeah.
So it's a little convoluted plot.
No, it's
interesting. It's really interesting, though.
Yeah, I agree. It is one of those. It is definitely an anime plot where it's like in a normal everyday movie you wouldn't think it existed, mostly because it's mafia and ghosts.
Yeah.
But it's still one of those plots where you're just like, yeah, I like this. This is enjoyable. This is pretty cool.
And I apologize in advance because the current chapter I'm writing in the middle of an attack, I plan to allude to the fact that Argo may die.
Oh.
And I already feel the hate because I don't want to kill her, and I won't kill her because I just let her take a very fatal looking blow, but it will look like that she will die, and I already feel the hate coming for me.
Kill Argo. Kill Argo. Kill Argo.
It'll be interesting to see what would happen if that actually happens, but that's all. Personally, it's all up to the author, being you in this instance, and also how that would affect everyone around it. So don't just kill people just because you can. Kill them in such a way so it affects things around them.
But basically, I use Argo's near death that for my main character to get angry and basically run ahead, chasing the bad guy. So he gets separated from his friends, so he's easy prey. And then I plan to kill one of my OC characters, his mentor, sort of, because I want him to be really angry at Locking Coffin, to start hunting them down with everything he has, and kind of force his character to develop. Because up until now, he's very strong for a frontliner, but he's very naive, and he's less sure of himself. So I basically want him to find motivation to go forward and get even stronger and find the bad guys. So
it's like my character.
So I don't want to kill Argo. Blame Ruby Volume 3 because I watched it recently. And it's just a way for him to lose control and separate from everyone.
I've also been thinking about like how are you going to choose which characters to kill, because you need to kill a main character. It's just how it is. Like you can't all the character from the actual series survive, because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
every single like what I will usually do is I'll plan out the storyline I want for my character, and like the general rule of storyline is that they need to resolve to some degree. Obviously, that you do. That's how people like stories to be. But so then you can only kill characters that aren't necessary for resolving that, for resolving something like that. If dying wouldn't destroy the resolution or untie it to some degree.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the mentor character's death I planned for pretty much most of the story ever since I started writing him in the first chapter, because I always planned him that he would be more of a father figure for him than his actual father, who was never ever around, and he was also a friend for him who we can trust, and losing him will be the one thing that made him really focus to hunt down any PKers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
I go kill the killers.
yeah, and I already have a skin after they get out of the game, because that character has a daughter, 4-year-old, I think. So I wanted to make a skin with my character visiting the child of his mentor, to really end that part of the story, to really say goodbye and finally get over that his guilt for not being strong enough to protect him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I like that there are so much things have an effect for so long of the story, but the problem is it's so much far away. And I see it. I have most of the things I have planned out. I just need to write it down.
Yeah, no, that's definitely it. Now we've talked about our own fan fictions for a while. Should we probably we've established that we're better than the original SAO. That's good.
I think that's why I love fan fictions in general, because even if we have a good show or a bad show, we have new certain point of views that we can explore new things, we can fix the mistakes, and just have a nice, interesting world to basically play God. And
yeah. No, a challenge I used to have with my friends is just we would sit down and we watch 4 episodes of an anime that was coming out that season, and we would determine whether it's good or it's bad, and then we would decide what we should have done or what it should have done to be good. And very often when we found bad ones, we wouldn't be able to really just change it into the same thing with a bit different and it would be good. What we would usually have to do is that we would take one concept of it that was good and we would make an entirely new story, because some stories just aren't. You can't do
interesting, I guess.
Yeah, there's just they have an interesting concept, but it doesn't help at all.
Have a good concept, but execution is not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that with the Harry Potter films, that I really don't like them.
Right there.
You probably made a lot of people rage quit this podcast.
Yeah.
But SAO isn't at that point to me. It doesn't, because it focuses enough on its concept that you don't have to change everything, and every character and tiny event that happens in it is still viable as a storyline, right? It just needs fixing.
Yeah, that has a lot of potential and a lot of new ideas to make it more, but we don't need really necessarily replace what was already written.
Yeah, because what I do, for example, I wrote in Silica, and I basically changed most of her entire character, right? She's the same general personality to some degree, but she doesn't meet Kirita at the point she does. She doesn't even really meet Kirita throughout the entire story because it's just not necessary. I don't know. I was going somewhere with this, but now I'm not. So enjoy it.
For me, with the potential with SAO, right now I'm writing a Star Wars crossover that basically they playing Star Wars instead of Sword Art Online,
I
and
remember.
because I love both of these topics, and I just don't really want to change the characters, only the order they appear, order they interact, or and how they form relationships.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of good characters. Just need to give them the spotlight and have them make themselves interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you by doing that, they've all the characters would be elevated somewhat. Just give them more time just to become, as if I don't know, to grow as characters or just to do something else around. Even if it's like around the other main characters, even if it's something on their own or whatever, like a little bit of a spin-off, just to have the main or the side, I guess side main characters or whatever, but. Just have them do something just to make them better and a bit more. What's the word? Like I guess unique. I guess, but
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Make them interesting characters instead of making them a plot point.
yeah,
Yeah.
make them into actual people rather than just something to progress the story.
Yeah, definitely. No, so fucking. I think everyone can agree that the major problem with SAO is just it doesn't have enough time. At least the anime.
Yeah.
And
That's why progressive is so. That's why progressive is leaps and bounds ahead of the original.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I need it animated. We need that.
Give it now. Do it now.
Do it.
Do
It's-
it.
Do it.
Yeah, everyone wants the progressive album. It's fucking great. I need it in my life. But where was I? Oh, why are you doing this tonight? I shouldn't have had that glass of wine.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
But yeah, so I think for the SAO series, it just needs more time, and we need to get and it needs to get rid of some of the stories that, like, some stories are it just doesn't need it, and then some stories are pretty good. Like I like the stuff with the house that they're going to on the floor. I'm not entirely okay with the events that happen around Yui because I don't like that they reveal an underground dungeon like that.
Yeah.
Mention it again, and they should have revealed it like 10 years earlier with something real, like, and how it'd be a major plot point that this dungeon appeared. So
Yeah,
I feel like
it's
as well,
strange. It's
if
strange.
Yui was a bit more as well, it would have been a bit better as well.
yeah,
I think I really don't like that dungeon because think about it. Most of the people are at the first floor at the town of beginnings. And basically you tell me that you have a high level dungeon under the first floor's first city and people didn't find it for almost 2 years.
no, but what I assume is that it because they said it just appeared, and what I assume is that there's a dungeon that stays at the level that the players are at, and a bit above. It's kind of like the Dark Souls dungeon. Which basically, the longer you progress on the higher floors, the worse that dungeon becomes. And you go there if you want a real fight and you want to get legendary equipment.
The why path in the first floor, please? I just can't understand that. Why not put it in the fifth or the, I don't know, 75th floor?
It feels wrong to put it in, like, it's a dungeon that tracks every other floor. It needs to somehow be separated from the floors themselves, right? Because it's kind of subject to the floor you're on. It can't just be on the fifth floor and then it's all up, and then it starts scaling up the higher up you go the floors. Because at some point, it being on the fifth floor gets a bit redacted. It should maybe have been on the 70th floor when they're on the 80th floor, right? So if you put it on the first floor, it becomes separate from the rest of the game, right? It becomes this own thing that just lies under the entire Castle of Aincrad instead of thinking of it lying under the first floor. It's just you have to access it from the first floor.
Well, I would have liked more if they did it similar to like the Hollow Arena in the Hollow Fragment game. It would have made more sense, I think.
I totally know what you're talking about.
Well,
No, I haven't heard the whole
I
fragment.
think SAO what really needs more is world building. We need the characters to interact more, but more than that, we need to see the world they live in, say how they adapt, because they talk about I don't know which episode when Kirito and Asuna eats the rabbit stew. That 2 years pass and people get used to living in the game, but we doesn't really see it. We see Kirito going to point A to point B to fight bosses, to fight PKers, but we don't see how the most people really adjust, with a few exceptions, because it's really good. It's really interesting to see how humans adapt to a new world, to basically fighting for their lives, to new rules.
By the way, when you mentioned the whole the special dungeon thing, because I've foreshadowed that there's a floor where they have airships, because I've kind of changed it so that Aincrad is a castle in the middle of an archipelago of Sky Island, right? And so now that you've mentioned it, I think I'm going to make it so that the airship brings you to different islands, and those different islands are kind of that dungeons. They're each kind of sections of that dungeons floating around. And so they can pretend that there's been like an old ruined castle with much harder bosses, and like it also had 100 floors, but they're scattered, so you don't really know which of them are which floors, and you kind of have to map out the dangers of the enemies there. So you take the airship to one of them, and it could suddenly be the 100th floor, and you have to fight amazingly hard enemies, or you could go to the first floor and you fight new enemies that are really weak, and you're just like, well, this was pointless.
Well, that's an interesting concept.
Yes.
Very interesting. Not just because I really like airships, but it's just interesting about how to going to other floating castles as well. That would, I actually quite like that actually.
Thank you. Because like in the first chapter, in like some of the first paragraphs, it describes like, because when you start the game, you start on this tiny island, which is kind of the spawn island, and you can see the castle from there, and you can see some of the floors, because each floor of the castle has integrated its steampunk look with the theme of the floor to some degree. So like one of the floors is a tundra, and you can see that parts of the wall is frozen over, and one of the floors is this massive city that has airships around it, and that's explained. And then one of the floors has a giant tree that's hanging out from outside the castle and stuff like that. And therefore I foreshadowed it. And now I'm happy, because now I know how to capitalize on it.
That's interesting, because I plan to do something similar to my Star Wars story, because they travel to planet, but they don't know which is the next. So mostly they try to analyze the story, because the game itself has a story to go along with. It just go to the next floor and beat the boss. So they have to take a chance, go to the next planet, and the planet have different zones where there are stronger enemies, where there are weaker enemies, and they also have to fight against time, because sometimes they have to anticipate where the enemy side strikes. So where they
Are you gonna have a moment where in the story there's a Death Star, right? And they land on a planet close to the Death Star, because they need to, like, maybe the planet has a base there that transmits signals to the planet, or the Death Star is being built, and so that's where they're taking the resources. I'm just saying this as an idea, by the way.
Similar.
And then
It's a similar, because I used the Star Wars: The Old Republic game as my base of the game, and I have the enemy has a automated fleet that's very powerful. So I need my characters to plan to find how they can gain control of it, and they have to find the right planet where they are storing the control unit, they have to go through several steps to be able to attack that base, basically.
Okay, now for my idea was that if you have a planet destroying weapons, then you can have the players being on a planet and they can look back to previews for a planet where they know there are a lot of players, and you can have them watch as the planet destroying weapon crushes the planet, and they're just like, "Fuck, there was players on that."
Yeah, that's a good idea, and maybe in the later part of where the enemy starts losing and they get desperate, they can try to make examples of them, and they have a very little warning ahead, and so they can do something that they moved their fleet to attack, but that only arrives to see the planet bombarded or really destroyed all of itself. That's a good concept. I have to use that one.
Yes, no problem. Also, make sure that if the planet is close, that they actually see the effect. Like, in principle, if a planet explodes within the solar system of another planet, most of the planets in that solar system are going to go with it.
Yeah.
At least have a very large shower of meteorites heading right towards them.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Or depending if the planet even has an atmosphere, you can have giant waves of burning gas flying through space towards them.
Yeah, we will see how will it be when I go. But I started to say that because I have them go to planet, I usually actually start my first chapter well into the story before from the next chapter I want to go back to the start of the game, and in this first prologue that they are attacking a planet and they are basically flying ahead of the fleet with a single ship to strike behind the defenses, so the rest of the fleet can safely land and they can fight in earnest.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
That's basically I try to make something similar like episode 6 where they have to get the bunker so the ships can attack the Death Star.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Yeah,
Thinking about, because that's one of the things I could never in my life do. I could never like do a crossover fan fiction or any crossover writing. I just don't have the capacity.
It's strange because most of my fan fictions are crossovers. Despite myself, I usually don't like to read crossovers because I see too many cringe and too many badly made ones. Yet most of my ideas came from crossovers because I want to take concepts and powers from another anime or a book, and I just end up with another crossover.
Yeah, I like to think I have this kind of voice in my head that's just like, no, you're ruining the art these two people made. This is one thing, this is one painting, and this is the other. You don't combine Screaming, or what's it called? I don't know if that painter is called Scream, but there's a painter where there's blood in the sky and he's standing on a bridge and screaming. And Mona Lisa, you don't combine those two. They don't go together, okay? You don't have a screaming Mona Lisa with blood running out of her eyes. It's not okay. It's not the same painting anymore. That's how I feel about it. But then again, that's kind of irrational to some degree.
My voice usually tells me that do it.
Do it. I will never.
Basically, most of my ideas are crossovers. I very rarely have an idea that I really stay in the universe. Like 10 out of 9 are crossovers for me.
Yeah. It just boils down to thematic consistency, and I can see that in your crossover, you've gone what you usually do, from what I hear, that you really focus on one part of the crossover, and you just take the characters from one of the series and put it in there, and then some of the plot points. Right? For me, the problem is combining the universes, combining the worlds, and making them actually work together.
Yeah, I'm very careful that too, because I usually try to do crossovers like there's no real terminology that clashes with each other. Like I made a SAO as a base plane for a crossover and put it in the Katekyo Hitman Reborn, because Katekyo Hitman Reborn has Mafia that doesn't really appear in SAO, and it has strange powers that really doesn't appear in SAO. So there's no real clash, and I think I get a really good crossover out of it.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Like when two, like, my problem comes when you have crossovers and there's two very strong systems for how the world works. Examples would be One Piece and Star Wars, right? One Piece has the Devil Fruit and the hockey, right? And those are very strong, independent systems, and then Star Wars has the Force and technology, right?
Yeah, and you also have to be very careful that another really doesn't take over the other part, because for personal, I don't really like Naruto crossovers, because most of the time I see that Naruto is old, is a old, thousands of years old, and he's super powerful. He knows everything, and he just goes into the story because he's bored, and he's basically makes the story about his powers and nothing else.
Yeah, I think this is a special problem of quite a few of them, is that do ones which you feel like could fit or do an interesting dynamic of it. Don't do it just because you can. Make sure even if there's some things may collide between whatever, make sure that is interesting rather than just putting your favorite one into another and just making them win all the time. That's not interesting. You need to do stuff around it to make it interesting.
Go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I'm just thinking.
Well, not to promote myself again, but my second crossover is basically Rosario Vampire. You heard about it?
No.
Basically, a human kid goes to a school that's for yokai, and if they know he's human, he will be hunted down and killed. And I basically put it together with Katekyo Hitman Reborn, where I put my main character into the schools, same as that he's a human. And it's really interesting because I need to basically make two hidden worlds not only meet with each other, but fit seamlessly. And that's sometimes that's a real challenge, and I think that's why I really love that story, because it makes me think more the possibilities that how does it work, why doesn't they know each other, but if they know each other, then why they are not fighting or something similar. And
no, it's oh fuck, my brain died again. Concentrate, Paul, you can take over.
If I can do a little bit of self-promotion on my side.
Go ahead. Without too much.
It's not SAO related or whatever, but I've worked with a very good friend for a particular crossover which we feel like could work quite well. And it's worked reasonably well so far. Ever heard of a franchise called Ace Combat?
Nope. I heard the name, but I don't know much about it.
It's basically, it's more like I'm not going to call it a simulator. It's basically, I can call it more like a power fantasy in terms of you're a fighter pilot and you fight in a very similar but different Earth, where there's like all these different nations and that, but you can kind of tell who is who. Like, that's the United States, this is pretty much Europe and everything else around that. And you just basically fight across a bunch of missions while trying to solve for these invaders trying to take over a certain nation or whatever. And 9 times out of 10, actually scratch that, every single time it will end with you fighting against some giant super weapon of some kind, either it be special these railguns which can shoot down meteorites, or a giant island which is full of missiles or whatever. And we decided to cross that over with Azure Lane. Not sure if you heard of that one.
I heard it. I played maybe 5 minutes before it, because I already played that by that time with Honkai Impact. But yeah, it came up before, I think, in chat.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, Silver, have you heard of it?
No.
You
It's
know how?
basically ships are anime girls.
Yes. Thank you for describing it
I
within
can
a few words.
I can dig that. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Basically, combine two and how the two worlds have interact between the two, and how certain events in one world have been affected by this new by new people being involved in it, basically, and how and yes, we've got a good storyline going, and it's perhaps our most popular one so far. So people must be enjoying it.
Yeah. If I get to self-promote, I'm a genius. I love writing, and my writing is awesome. Yeah, that's the extent of it. There you go. Enjoy that.
Basically, yes, I too am very humble.
I think that
No.
podcast is basically self-promotion, but I love it more all the
Okay.
same.
You know what? I'm gonna do some actual self-promotion. The problem with me is that where I am the strongest is not in fan fiction, because that's not where I've developed my talents. Because most of my life I've spent time sitting down with people who really don't want to listen to what I'm saying and telling them stories. Okay? So I've been making stories for most of my life, and they're all original stories and have massive storylines that are all connected to each other, and also smaller stories that are just small and refined. And as I've developed as within writing and within just consuming endless amounts of video game content and movie content and anime content, I've figured out what makes a good story to some degree. Hypothetically, I don't know. People tend to stop listening after a while, so they never comment on it. What was I? Oh yeah, so I'm a great writer. But yeah, what I was gonna say is just that my expertise doesn't lie in making fan fiction or combining universes. My expertise lies in creating universes, and so often what I'm doing right now with the fan fiction I'm making is that I'm just assuming that I made SAO, or I'm assuming that I came up with the idea of SAO, and I'm just going from there. And it seems to be working well enough, because it does get that slow developing and hopefully interesting life that I'm going for with stories. Right there. That was acceptable.
Understandable. Have a nice day.
Yeah,
right.
I'm just trying to not contain myself from going on a rant about the stories.
But if all of us are introducing ourselves, I think I am the most humble of out of all of, because I really don't think I'm really good. I just love what I'm doing, and I started writing with the thought that if at least one person reads my story and says that oh, it's a good story, I think I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
No, I have the problem that I'm the kind of person who I want to be the biggest genius in the room, but I'm also hyper paranoid. So I'm like, I'm not the biggest genius in the room, but I'm going to talk as if I am, because I would rather be the genius in the room and be very arrogant about it, while still taking the chance that I might not be the genius and I might just look like an arrogant bitch, than to be the genius in the room and not say it. In other words, I would rather be a bitch than humble. Yeah.
Right. But anyway, so getting back onto the topic, I guess, or sort of online.
Yeah, that's probably smart.
Since we have a lot of criticism about it, why didn't we go over quickly some good positives about it as a whole? Because
Right.
I feel like we can do a bit more in terms of how we're writing stuff about it, so surely it must be good enough to write about it. So
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Like, the first thing is just that SAO has a genius idea when it comes to going into a world like that, because you get the actual emotions of being in a game and being in an RPG, and it also makes logical sense that you have game systems and health and stuff that usually wouldn't exist within that world,
Well,
without making the characters feel illegitimate.
Well, I think we talked about the previous episode that for me, my favorite moment in the anime is the first episode where they told that it's a death game, that there's no escape, and Kirito suddenly feels as if the paper cut that he got before entering the game, that it suddenly manifested it in his virtual avatar. And I think that's such a good way to show how real it feels, how they have to accept that that's their life now. That no matter if it weeks, months, or years before they can get out, they are not in the real world. They are not home. They are in a new world with lots of dangers and but also lots of possibilities.
Yeah. And like one of the things that you get there is the whole semi-philosophical idea that just because it isn't really real, there isn't a difference at this point, right? Because you're gonna feel it all and you're gonna die, and like the only thing that you would usually have in a game like that differentiated from the world is that there isn't an actual consequence, but now it's added and you can't really tell the difference between it and the real world other than the fact that the way you conduct your behavior is a bit different because the rules of the world is different, but the consequences are the same, and so the amount of seriousness you have to put into it is the same.
Yeah, that's like the abridged version that where they say that I don't know for line to line that Kayaba announced the dev game and they say that jokes on you, if I die in the real world, I die there too. So no change. It's the same.
Yeah, nothing changed. If I die in the real world, I die in the real world.
Oh yes, the floor here is made out of floor.
Yeah.
Or the blue sky is blue.
Well, it isn't because the sky's a roof. Oh god, the Trump thing that says I'm an extremely stable genius.
We are fighting for memes.
Oof. Where were we? SAO.
We're all over the face.
So another blah good thing about
English.
it's just it doesn't take away or it allows you to have teenage characters or human characters that we can relate to because they're real life people in a situation that is fantasy, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it doesn't. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I like Lisbeth's character so much because she's in the death game. She has to fight to survive, but she still finds a way to uh, go after her passions. That he wanted to be a blacksmith, and despite all the dangers, despite all the disadvantages that you get for focusing on a support class instead of being a frontliner, that she still made it possible, and she not only made it possible, he get really good at it. And
can you imagine like if the stats were point based and Asuna put all their stats into cooking and she's like, no, I don't need damage.
Just throw food at the enemy and it'll kill them.
Yeah, throw it at the enemy and kill them. It's just like, well, it would be fun if Asuna's secret was that she's actually really bad at the game. She just figured out that the food system is overpowered and you get so many buffs from it that it's just, just do that.
yeah.
Yeah, but as we were saying, like when you get characters that are human in the game, you also feel like they can react in ways that are more human, and you also ground the story a lot more because when you watch a fantasy story, you kind of go, well, this isn't gonna happen, and this isn't how everyone here would act and do things differently because the world would be different. Like a lot of people, when they see a fantasy story, kind of just goes, well, this isn't realistic. It's the Middle Ages. They would be shitting in buckets. You don't get that with SAO to some degree. which I don't know if that's the people's fault or if that's the series' fault. Yes.
I guess it's because so many people focus on the characters rather than the stuff around it. So I think that kind of helps it in this regard. I guess that the characters are rememberable enough to be liked, so people focus on them rather than anything else around it, which could be an issue like what you've just mentioned.
Yeah, no, it depends a lot. Like, but in general, it is a very different feel to a fantasy world because the reason it is a fantasy world and the reason it's there is so different, and that's might be what makes it interesting, especially now in modern times when VR is being popularized and Valve has announced that they're putting neural readers inside their next headset.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about the fantasy general that even if the fantasy it takes in an era similar to medieval ages, you don't have to follow all the rules that's how they did it back then, because you have elements that strange the way the world works, or simply have I don't know, have working toilets because someone was a genius and invented it centuries before.
Like a war, like if you look at the what was it called? I reincarnated the day I got reincarnated as a slime. Is that it? That time I got reincarnated as a slime.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
It's on my watch list.
Okay, well, he uses the tech. Like he comes from the modern world, and he uses the technology or the ideas for technology in the modern world, combines it with what he learns about magic in that world, and uses it to create utilities they have in that world. Like he takes a shower head and he puts he makes a normal irrigation system with water pipes, but instead of having heating elements that are electrical, he just puts a heating rune inside the shower head and it makes it produce warm water.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
And you could do that hypothetically from like as a fantasy character, but it isn't from the real world. So
yeah,
I think I watched an anime. I just don't know the name. That they did something similar with new inventions because the character was isekai into that, but for the life of me, I can't remember.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things that I have you seen Jobless Reincarnation? And if you haven't, why not? Go watch it now.
I've read quite a bit of the manga.
Okay, because I don't know what they do in the manga. I'm gonna read it after I read Hiromiya, or however it's pronounced. That's an awesome series. But it has a sense of realism to it. Like it makes the world feel like it's a bit of a medieval style. Because you can see that there's a lot of farm workers and the houses are made the same way and they kind of live the same way and they use a fireplace and stuff like that. I don't know to what extent, but I wish they at some point would make a joke about not having a proper toilet. That would be nice.
Oh yeah, it's a good toilet joke.
Yeah, a good toilet joke. It's very critical to the storyline.
Yeah. So one thing I would say about Sword Art Online is that it did help kickstart. Granted, it isn't really one itself, but it did help kickstart as a whole the isekai genre.
Yeah, that's definitely something.
At least in anime form, like
at least in anime form.
It was pretty popular in manga. It's just that people got more interested in reading that kind of manga after Sword Art Online came out.
Yeah.
So they just start releasing them, and look where we are now.
It made it mainstream.
Which it's both a good and bad thing because we got ReZero, we got Jobless Reincarnation, we got Slime, we got Shield Hero, but we've gotten some really bad ones too.
The phone one. Oh god, what was the other one called?
I started watching the time I reincarnated as a spider or something similar.
I love that one. It's so much fun.
It's interesting. That's not my favorite, but not really bad. I don't know. So
I like it. It's just watching basically a best girl being a spider and gaining XP. That's what it is to me.
Yeah.
The thing I dislike the most about that series is when they go away from her being a spider and go to the other characters. And, well, we're developing plot, but I don't need plot. I just need the spider to go around killing chicks.
Yeah, it's really disorienting that you got to invest in that. What happens to her, and suddenly it goes to the other characters. And who Who the hell are they?
Who are you? Who are you?
Why are you here? I want to
Why-
see Spider-Girl.
Why should I care about these people?
Why should I care about these people? They don't have 6 legs and a cute voice.
Yeah. And there are too many
Yeah.
of them.
Only one of these people are cannibals. Why am I watching them? Go back to the cannibal spider instead.
I don't know, I guess for me, what makes it elevates it beyond the other ones is that it does something different, but does it relatively well, I suppose. And because it's not just the same old. It follows how a good half follow a checklist of what they need to do.
Yeah.
It's just okay. It's a good enough system to begin with, but then it kind of gets boring, even though it may be a good idea to begin with. So start trying to do something else, which adds something to it, and not tries to do something which doesn't really add anything to it. It's just like I don't know when it started, but a few years ago now, where it was more of a okay, it's not just someone reincarnated to another world. They can have something with them.
Yeah.
Have you
And
seen?
then
Sorry. Have you seen Mao-sama Retrai? It's a pretty cringe isekai. That's basically character with an OP player character gets isekai in the world as the player character, and it's just it's a mess. Mess.
I've seen one where it's all about a guy getting reincarnated with a phone. That's it. And,
yes, the smartphone one. That's I have to say was very generic. It wasn't awful. It was just generic.
yeah, it was. Yeah. Have you seen the Misfit at a Demon Academy?
Ooh, I heard about it.
It's such a oh my god, it's so much fun to watch, mostly because it makes no sense, and it's just to watch an overpowered character be overpowered.
Yeah, it's just a power. It's the entire point of it is a power fantasy, but it's very good at being a power fantasy.
Yeah, it's a power fantasy that wants to be a power fantasy instead of a power fantasy that just is someone who thinks they're not writing a power fantasy.
Which if you want to do that stuff, it's fine, do it, because there's plenty of good stuff. Which is a power fantasy.
It's one of those things where it's like it's not perfect and it's not a good story at its core to some degree, but it's also like, oh, this is kind of cool. We've been watching really bad power fantasies for a long time now, and here's one that just is a power fantasy and focuses on being a power fantasy, and that way it's actually good at being a power fantasy. And it's not like I'm not going to go away from it thinking this is the best shit I've ever watched. I'm going to go away thinking, oh, that was cool. I liked it. It had good funny moments.
Well,
So go on.
If we are talking about power fantasy, we have to mention Overlord. That's for me. That's the tip of the iceberg. I just love that story, and can't wait.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen most of it, but of what I've seen and what I've heard, it does do a power fantasy quite very well. But it's kind of like he knows he is his own double-edged sword in terms of he is pretty much the biggest bad guy around, but he doesn't want to take over the world because it's like, hang on a minute, I'm the bad guy. I can't. I don't want to be the real bad guy. But I have to keep on being the bad guy.
He's basically that he plays the role of the bad guy, so the people under him don't even think about replacing him and turn against him. Yeah. But also he also wants to, if anyone else came over like him, to know the name of the guild that they can recognize and know that, hey, there's someone from the other side here. I'm not alone.
Well, I think I've seen like a YouTube video on that anime. It's the guy who becomes like the main boss of a dungeon or something.
Yeah. I really like that story.
It's a really interesting concept, as it sounds like. He doesn't really need to be a bad guy. Like, he's put in a position where he needs to be the most powerful thing because he knows that he's not the most powerful thing, and if anyone figures that out, they're going to replace him.
The funny thing is that basically the plan for world domination came because he flew into sky to watch the new world that where he ended up, and he just told that himself that, oh, that's such a beautiful world. It would be fun if I have all of it, and other that one of his underlings just heard that, and okay, he went to the others and said that our Lord wants to take over the world,
Oh wow.
and and it's such a interesting concept that basically his underlings are doing everything to take over world for him, and they misunderstand a lot of his choices, and he just basically plays them so they don't think he's not really as good as they think.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun. Yeah, I've seen that. Brain. No, there's a lot of nice isekai that just explores interesting concepts.
But also has many bad, yeah.
Game off of SAO. One of the things I think that makes SAO stands out though is that in SAO, every character is the isekai character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes it so that there's no like, oh, here's the adorable woman that I get to or here's the elf girl. Oh, it's just, here's another person that's trapped in the death game with me. Oh my god.
Okay, progressive, we have elf girl. In progressive, we got the elf girl.
Is there elves is there races in progressive?
I think there's a quest line. I think it starts in the third floor. That basically the high elves or forest elves, I don't really know the name, against the dark elves.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I have a guy who records his fanfiction as audiobooks for me, and he's talked about those a quest line like that, the dark elf quest line or something.
And it would be an interesting thing to take that idea and place it all over the game to make it not just a simple quest line, but really make it part of that. There are NPCs, there are elf NPCs, and make it more of a fantasy game.
Yeah. No, that's one of the things I'm going to do. There's going to be an actual story and an actual developing in the game. Like the floors are going to change. There's going to be probably events that where cities will be built for reasons and stuff like that. It's just because it's a cool thing, and it's because the cardinal system in my version is designed to generate new stuff, and so even if they do all the quests, the NPCs have patterns and ideas and things they do, and so the cardinal system will just go, oh, we don't have the quest quota, we'll just generate new quests, and here are some good explanations for why the quests exist. And you can see that as the cardinal system gets to study players and how they do quests and how they interact with the world, it changes the way it generates things to fit better with it, which is nice.
Yes, very good way of getting around the issue of we're running out of quests.
Yeah, it is. Because one of the things I don't really like the idea of having a game where, because it's obvious that you have to have a game where everyone does the same quest. But, I don't feel like that's necessary in the SAO thing, because that's only going to lead to, oh no, the beta testers took all the best quests. Oh.
Yeah.
So, which is a nice way to make people hate the beta testers, but I got better ideas.
I think that was a good idea in the right direction, where the Christmas event, where they just told from the NPCs that there will be a Christmas event, and you can get a new item from it, a special item from it, if you can defeat it. And they had to go after the clues, and they had to fight each other to get who can have a go at the boss.
Yeah, you want to know the true explanation for why Kirito didn't die in the 70th floor is? It's because Klein used the item.
Oh, that's that just the other day I just thought about it. It would be cool to use that item, because I just saw it that they got it. Kirito gave it to Klein, and there's been no mention it since.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, it is like the best explanation I can come up with to what happened with Kirito, if we're going to be legit. And for all we know, the item doesn't have to be activated.
That's really good.
So for all you know, Klein could be blind or stunned and being like, I can just use this item real quick.
Ooh, that's a
Oh.
really good idea.
Really
Yeah.
good. Bravo.
Flame for the win.
I was like, isn't this a plot point? Isn't this also a plot point? Don't these plot points fit together? Let's just. They're not. They're the same now. Nice.
Don't worry, they'll fit. Even if you have to get a hammer, they'll fit.
They'll fit. It's like when you're, if you're a parent and your child is playing with those different shapes they put in the box with holes, that's all the same shape. And
Yeah.
the kid doesn't get it. You're not supposed to teach the kid how to put it in. You're supposed to go get a hammer and teach the kid how to get it in.
There we go. The square fits in the circle.
See, now the square is the circle. Kid's just sitting there crying, and then like, okay, fine, you can have the hammer. And then the kid gets the hammer, continues to cry. And it's like,
If it was me, I would use the flamethrower to melt down the shapes and simply pour them in.
yeah, that works too. Yeah. Of course. Oh yeah, we have wooden flooring. I guess that's
More than plastic.
Oof. No, that's fun. So how long will the podcast be? Haven't we been here for like 2 hours, or am I wrong?
And almost 2 hours, but
Almost 2 hours.
when we think we should stop, we should stop. I don't think if you want, we can end this now. I think we went into a lot of good points, and maybe leave something to the next podcast.
Yeah, I think what we can do an outro with all of us just saying the name of our fanfiction and just a quick like explanation for those who have heard about our fanfiction now and is like, oh, I want to go read that. What's the name of this?
I think that's a good idea, Panzer.
What's to say that? So I say what mine is then.
Yeah, just the name of your fanfiction and a short, like, couple sentences about what it's about.
Okay. Mine, in a nutshell, is Sabretooth's Tale with a sequel which has just recently come out. Based around when Death Gun appears in Gun Gale Online. Instead of Kirito taking the role of trying to find who it is, someone else takes the role, and it's what happens after that, and that's basically it really, just leading on from them trying to figure out who this Death Gun is and how they link to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
I was going to say it's not as. I was just a good bit more detail into it, but I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, I think.
Don't spoil because I'm only the 5th chapter right now. I want to be surprised.
I think a lot of the readers who just like the Gun Gale arc and want more of it, and maybe didn't like Kirito as much, will probably just go, "I will read that." So that's no problem.
Sure.
Me, I am writing Sword Art Online fiction that's called Sword Art Online, or words English. Sword Art Online Blade Breaker. There we go. And it's basically about the main character is one of the co-creators of SAO. He's basically Kayaba's best friend and Rinko's brother, and the three of them made the game together. And they decided not to make it a death game, and they had a reason to make it a death game, which you'll figure out after a while. No spoilers. But then Kayaba behind their back makes a death game, and he and the main character just isn't capable of stopping it because he doesn't have access to any of his admin controls or anything. He needs to actually shut it down. And so out of pure panicked guilt, he decides to enter the game hoping that he can save at least a couple of players from the inside. So,
Nice.
yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Nice.
that's my turn.
Yeah.
My pick is a crossover between Sword Art Online and Katekyo Hitman Reborn. Its name is Sword Art Online version Vongola, and I basically made the main character of Katekyo Hitman Reborn, Tsuna, into my main character, and before the start of the Katekyo Hitman anime, I placed him into the Sword Art Online game and start with the dead game, and I want and have his character grow through these events and basically rewrite the entire story after that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, well,
Pretty good outro.
It was a pleasure, gentlemen.
It was a pleasure. Yes. We'll do it again.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bombshell.